In today's video, I want to highlight the VS Code extension ElixirLS, which is the primary extension I use within VS Code to kind of get Elixir work done. So to help showcase what it can do for you, I'm just going to go down the feature list and do a couple little demos. So the very first one on our list is auto completion. And that basically gets into doing auto completion for syntax. So if you start typing DEF, you can see the defaults for that. And then as you tap that, it'll kind of fill out. You can do hello, you can hit tab, and then case, and then fill that out. And that basically does different levels of auto completion. Eventually, as you write your own modules and your own functions, those will kind of auto-complete too. The second major feature that they talk about is debugger support, and that is a little bit hairier. So inside of VS Code, there is this section for run, and then you can run and debug. Now, to run debug requires you to create a launch.json file. So you can click this link, and that will create a default launch.json file for you that's appropriate for Elixir apps. So you've got a default, which is the default task, which is to launch the app, and then you've got a mix test. And then what this lets you do is within your source code or your test files in this case, you can turn on or turn off breakpoints. And the idea is that when you hit this little plus button, this will compile your app, run the test, and then when it gets to that moment, it will stop and show the breakpoint details. So when it hits the breakpoint, you'll see in the left area here, you'll see all the variables and all the arguments that were passed into the function. You can even get a sense of the call stack. Now, I do want to say outright that this debugger, while working here in this demo, is a little kind of flaky. So it's not something that I actually rely on day to day. But if you need to kind of get into that debugging mindset, it is a tool you can definitely try out. The next feature in the list is automatic incremental dialyzer analysis. And so to kind of demo what that looks like, I'll jump to the shortlinks.ex here, and I'm going to just change length into a string called bogus. And you'll notice after I save, it'll do some analysis, and it'll basically tell you that the contract is breaking. So they're expecting a non-negative integer, and I am passing it a string, and so that is kind of breaking. Let me just revert this, get that working again. On the topic of Dialyzer as well, they also have support for automatic suggestions for @spec. So Dialyzer will try to do a good job of figuring out typings for you. You can see here inside of our controller, we have not written specs yet. We are getting suggestions from ElixirLS. So basically it is looking at the code and kind of figuring out that this is probably going to accept a connection and a map, and it's going to return a connection. And you can kind of just leave that there as like the assumed contract, but then if you want to edit it, you can click it, and it'll actually, and then put in the actual text, and then you can kind of customize it as you want. And then when you hit save, it'll get rid of the kind of assumed spec, and it will honor the spec that you've actually written. Next on the list is code completion. So let's go back to short links and let us try to find something to edit here. So let us choose base URL encode. So if we were to type base URL, you can see we get different options, and we can do URL encode 64. Then we've got smart automatic closing of code blocks. I believe that's just in reference to, like, if I type in hello, define hello do, and then I type in enter, it'll automatically add the end, and it'll like put the cursor such that I'm putting it in the body of the block. Next, we've got documentation lookup on hover. So to demo this, let's go to the shortlink controller. And you can see like we've got shortlinks.getAvailableRandom token. So if you just hover over that, it'll show you the inline, the documentation that we wrote for that function along with the type spec. So you can kind of look up things there. You can look up your own functions as well as any of the built-in ones. So if we go back to short links here and look at something like repo.insert. You can see the ecto documentation right there. Similar, we've got, in addition to documentation, we've got go to definition. So now if I'm inside of the controller and let's say I want to look at what shortlinks.getAvailableRandomToken actually does, you can hold down the command key and then you'll see this will turn into a link. Then when you click on that, it'll actually jump to the implementation. If you want to jump back, you can go back, and then that'll go back to the controller. There is a code formatter with this extension, so if you add some variable, spacing, and then you hit Command S, I have it built so that it'll run the formatter on save, and that kind of helps make sure the code is kind of like consistent from edit to edit and from contributor to contributor. If you want to run the formatter manually, you can do Command Shift P and do format, and then choose format document, and it'll find the formatter that you get with the extension. And if there's not one chosen, it'll kind of offer to choose which one you actually want to use. Next up, we've got find references to functions and modules. So we'll jump back to shortlinks.ex, and you can see, inside of this module, we have built a function called getAvailableRandomToken. If we right-click this, we can choose to find all references, which again has a shortcut if you want there. And then it will list all of the parts of the code that actually call it. So you can see this is defined within shortlinks.ex, and you can see within the controller, this is calling it. And if you had a much bigger application, you would see all different kinds of references here. In addition to viewing references in the sidebar, you can actually also peek at references too. So if you right-click the function and you can do peek references, and then that'll show kind of like an inline window where this is being used. This is also really helpful for the implementation. So if you're looking for, get available random token, you can actually peek at its definition, and it'll show you the definition real inline. So you actually don't even have to jump an entire file. You can kind of just like look at it right there inline. And then finally, we've got quick simple lookup. So when you are inside of a file, you can hold down, or you can actually do Command T, and this will actually search for all of the symbols across a project. So in this case, the pound will do the entire project, and then the @ will do the symbols just within the file. So you can see this is the shortlinks.ex. So if I bring up command and I do @ then this will show all the different symbols. And you can see we got kind of like duplicate symbols because we've got the lightning bolt there, which represents the type spec that was defined. And then we've got the actual defined P, which is the actual function name. I'm sure there are a lot more things that we're getting from ElixirLS, but those are kind of like the highlighted features, and hopefully this was helpful to showcase what kind of is possible within the tool. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.